Devastation beyond imagination. The governor of Puerto Rico says it could be months before power is restored to that beleaguered island. Hurricane Maria devastated Puerto Rico with high winds and floods that turned some streets into raging rivers.
And in Mexico, a frantic search for survivors is still underway after that massive earthquake 2 days ago. George Thomas brings us this look at the aftermath of both of these terrible natural disasters.
First responders are out on the streets of San Juan, Puerto Rico, after the strongest storm in 83 years slammed into the Caribbean island.
Maria destroyed hundreds of homes, snapped trees, and as you can see, tore off roofs and dumped at least 20 inches of rain. The governor says his island is completely destroyed.
Residents of the U.S. territory joined firefighters as they fanned out across the capital, clearing wood and debris from the streets.
This is my apartment. First time I come inside. This is very sad.
As people took stock of the damage, officials are warning it could be months before power is restored on the island, with hotels, ballrooms, shelters, and sports arenas quickly filling up with the homeless. Some are singing about finding strength through the storm. They'll need it as the recovery and cleanup slowly gets underway. The hurricane came ashore off Puerto Rico's northwest coast Wednesday, packing winds of 155 miles per hour, just 2 miles an hour under a Category 5. The storm regained strength as it moved back over open water, on course to slam into Turks and Caicos and the Dominican Republic. 2,300 miles west of Puerto Rico, this is the scene in Mexico City, as emergency crews are still working tirelessly to find survivors following that 7.1 magnitude earthquake that struck the central part of the country. Over 40 buildings collapsed in the capital city. Operation Blessing, which has a significant presence in the country, responded soon after the earthquake struck Tuesday afternoon, deploying people on motorcycles to distribute water and other essential supplies to some of the hardest hit areas of the city. Within a few hours, hundreds got busy helping set up mobile kitchens and filling warehouses as they stepped up to meet the needs of their hurting neighbors. Local authorities also joined a human chain of Operation Blessing volunteers as they packed vital supplies bound for some of the outlying areas near the quake's epicenter.
Everywhere we look, there are houses down, houses condemned, and their families sleeping out in the elements.
The Operation Blessing team brought a truckload full of tents and quickly set to work erecting the temporary shelter for scores of families who had lost homes. 245 people have died so far, with Mexico City bearing the brunt of the deaths and damage. More than 2,000 were also injured, and so the need for help is great. George Thomas, CBN News.
You know, I want to ask you, and I ask Wendy, can you imagine what you would be like if you had no power? You had no ability to have a refrigerator, no ability to have a microwave, no ability to have an electric oven, no ability to have any kind of generation of power, no lights, no heat, no cold and hot. You couldn't have any of those things.
No, I've roughed it, but that would be roughing it to a place I never have gone before.
You know, if you go on a camping trip, you've got,
you've got supplies, you've got food and water, and
you've got
comfortable
sleeping bags,
yeah.
And you've got tents, but the average person doesn't have that. But to think of being without any kind of power at all for an extended period, just think of what it'd be like if your refrigerator doesn't work. Well, we're so used to having refrigerated food. All the food in your refrigerator will go stale, go rotten on you. I mean, it'd be terrible. Same thing in Mexico City with those awful disasters. Buildings falling down on people's heads and relief agencies looking out for the poor and the needy. We need your help, by the way, Operation Blessing, CBN Center, Virginia Beach, Virginia. We can help a lot of people, and we do, but every dollar is multiplied many times, sometimes 3 or 4 times, because we multiply it with working with other agencies. But, folks, there is tragedy that is of unimaginable proportions, unimagined. And those poor people down in Puerto Rico, you know, it's just unbelievable what they've been through.
And some of the flash flooding images that are coming in from Puerto Rico, they're getting still, as we speak, lots and lots of rain on top of the no power. And of course, you can live without food for a few days, but water. And a lot of times when there's flooding, it contaminates the water supply. And so we've got to have water get to those people. So
we have clean water. We bring them. We have tarps for their living. But it's just temporary, but it keep them alive during this period of crisis.
That's right.
Well, here at home, some senators are trying to help churches who have suffered from natural disasters. John Jessup has that.
Thanks, Pat. Unprecedented natural disasters have left many American churches damaged and in need of desperate repair. But current laws exclude houses of worship from receiving federal disaster relief from FEMA. So 4 senators, including James Lankford of Oklahoma, have introduced a bill to change the law so churches can be included among the nonprofits receiving federal aid. Lankford told CBN News why they're behind this measure.
Churches have been denied FEMA aid, which makes it very, very ironic. In my state, you may have a tornado that comes through the middle of a town that destroys several homes, damages a church. That church damage, though it may be, ends up being the shelter for quite a few folks or the food distribution network. But at the end of it, they have no access to the FEMA disaster funds. Everything else around them does. That doesn't make sense. The federal government cannot discriminate on someone simply based on the fact that they're a church.
And since this is an urgent need, Lankford is hopeful the Senate will take up this bill quickly. Well, Congress will soon consider President Trump's top financial priorities, taxes and health care. And David Brody talked with one of the president's key point men on both issues, his budget director, Mick Mulvaney.
When it comes to movers and shakers inside Washington, D.C., look no further than White House Budget Director Mick Mulvaney. He's not only the main number cruncher when it comes to the budget, he's a key participant in making sure President Trump's policy agenda gets to the finish line, and that includes tax reform and repealing Obamacare. Trending in the news lately is this big final push in the Senate on a bill to replace Obamacare. A vote is scheduled for next week. Mulvaney made an appearance on CBN's Faith Nation program on Facebook, where he talked about the prospects.
I think if you ask me how many votes it has as of today, 48, 49 maybe, which last time I checked is not enough. 50 is the threshold.
The budget director is keenly aware that senators will be waiting to see the costs associated with the bill. A preliminary Congressional Budget Office report will be out next week. But Mulvaney says even if the CBO's numbers don't look good, that shouldn't matter.
While their data is required, it's been wrong a lot in the past.
Mulvaney and the White House are also juggling tax reform. The big move to pass that is set for this fall.
You think that there will be a bill on the president's desk, say, by the end of the year?
I hope so. That's still the president's top priority. If you've got listeners watching this show or viewers watching this show who are 30 years old, they've never had a job in a truly healthy American economy. That's defined as 3% or greater. So we want to try and get back to that, and tax reform is a central piece of that, which is why we've been working so hard on it.
No specifics on the plan yet, except that we know President Trump wants to see a much lower tax rate on businesses, down to 15%. That's the centerpiece, but is it non-negotiable?
Nothing's set in stone in Washington, but if you ask the president what his priorities are on the tax reform bill specifically, that 15% rate is absolutely critical to us. Why? Because if we want to go back to that 3% economic growth, you have to have more investment in the country. The way you drive GDP growth is a function of the number of people working multiplied by how productive they are.
When it comes to Mulvaney's priorities for the federal budget, the one that gets the most high-profile attention is the wall.
I want to make it very clear that the wall absolutely continues to be a priority for the president.
How to pay for it is another matter. The Trump administration wants $1.6 billion. Most Democrats don't want it at all, and even a decent-sized group of Republicans aren't sure either. Trump's art of the deal will have to come into play, something Mulvaney saw for himself recently when the president cut a deal with the two top Dems in Congress, Chuck and Nancy.
How concerned should conservatives be about what we're hearing so much about, this new bipartisan Chuck and Nancy wheeling and dealing?
Is not concerned at all. I think what you've seen now is the president more interested in getting results. When you are the president and you're interested in passing an agenda, maybe it's not that unusual for you to step back and say, okay, who can help me get this stuff done?
As for that meeting with the president and Chuck and Nancy, he says he was right there in the room, had a front row seat for all of it. He calls it fascinating times and stories that he's going to tell his grandchildren about one day in the future. David Brody, CBN News, Washington.
Thanks, David. Pat, these are fascinating times indeed.
They are indeed. You know, the Republicans have just got to get their act together. If they don't pass a couple of these major pieces of legislation, their period of ascendancy is over. They're going to lose majorities in the Senate and possibly in the House. They're looking at maybe even losing the presidency in the next go-around. They've got it all now. They have the Senate, they have the House, they have the White House, they have it all. And it's been given them to govern this country. And so the American people are saying, you guys get your act together. And these outliers like Lisa Murkowski and those who are opposing, for example, the repeal of Obamacare, the American people want the health care fixed. They want it fixed. And so I call upon the Republicans who are in charge of the government, fix the stuff, especially this tax cut. We need a tax cut. We need it. And don't listen to this nonsense about, well, let's not help the rich. Well, the truth is the job creators are the ones who have the capital to invest in businesses. So it may be that they're richer than others, but helping them or denying them benefits is not going to help the working people. The working people will get help when everybody is helped. Whew. So let's do it.